we've covered hops. So what are some of your favourite hops?
Some of my favourite hops are not Citra.
Not Citra.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Citra?
I've heard of Citra, yeah.
I absolutely cannot stand those hops. I think it smells like sweat. They're absolutely horrendous. I love Nelson. Nelson are a particular favourite of mine. I really love Bramley Cross. You get a crazy, like really kind of complex dark fruit aroma coming from it. Willamette is another one that's laughed at by a lot of brewers because it's one of the main hops in Budweiser.
Is that similar to Cascade?
Willamette, I think it is. I think I've seen that somewhere. That it is relatively related to or from a Cascade heritage, whatever it is they call it. Lovely hops, very spicy. We used a lot of it in the Imperial Brown Ale, the AB10 we did. I don't know if you've had that.
I haven't had that.
That's the last release, the one we put in whiskey barrels and stuff like that. So a lovely kind of earthy, spicy, fudgy aroma to it. Beautiful, beautiful hops.
Now, one of the guys on the forum was interested to see if you would let's slip the hop schedule for Hardcore IPA.
Yeah, hops for the Hardcore IPA. Columbus.
But I don't expect you to know it off the top of your head, unless you do.
I do. Actually.
He does. He knows it off the top of his head.
He makes it every day, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, Columbus for the bittering. It's actually Columbus extract that we use, which is something that we have made especially for us by some guys over in Germany. It's CO2 extract. It's actually used a lot in big commercial breweries and stuff like that because they get the yield off it and stuff. But what we found is we got a trial batch of it, and we did a trial batch of Hardcore with it, and it gave the beer an incredible resinous flavour and aroma to it. That's it sitting over there in these tins. I'll show you on the actually. Big tins of concentrated hops. That's 2 kilograms, 50% of which is alpha acids.
Bloody hell.
So it's very, very concentrated, but it's something that we never thought we would use, and we never thought we would like. But because it's Columbus that we bought in and sent over to these guys, they make it especially for us. It's got an amazing resinous quality to it that really lends itself to the kind of the profile of the Hardcore.
Have you ever considered Brewdog going into making homebrew related products, beer kits, extracts, things like that? So you've got guys, so you're buying in these Columbus hops, you're sending them over to Germany, they're essentially concentrating and extracting them.
Yeah.
I can only assume the same company might be able to do the same with a wort, essentially.
Yeah.
And then, is that anything you've ever considered doing, or would consider maybe? Or?
It's something we have talked about. It would be quite a cool little thing to do. The only problem is it would require fairly specialised equipment. Now, with our move down to the new brewery down in Ellen, it might be possible to do some of this. But basically, what you need to do is take wort and boil it almost dry, boil it down to a syrup, which you would need specialised equipment for. I think it would be cool to do. It'd be nice to get some other home. Like I used to love the Coopers from Australia. They did some really cool stuff. But I found that quite a lot of the kits that you got, they needed tweaks, they needed malts, they needed hops, to just make them a little bit more complex. Yeah. So it would be cool to do little homebrew kits like that would have that kind of complexity.
Yeah, so you could do like an extract brew, because obviously you've got the kits in tins. Yeah. That's hops, malt extract. Yeah. You've just got a pack of yeast, and you're supposed to shove a kilo of sugar or dextrose into it as well. Aye. Or whatever it might be, the dry malt extract, etc. But if you guys were going to do it, you could do liquid malt extract, just unhopped, and then just include the hops and specialty grains.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would actually probably be the more sensible way to do it, because the hops are much more stable in that form. Yeah, I mean, it is something that we talked about a while ago, but the decision was made that we didn't really have the space or capacity to do stuff like that.
Well, they might do it in the future, folks. Maybe. You might be able to buy Brewdog beer kits in the future. It's an exclusive for Big Secue's homebrew. Okay, so yeast. Let's talk yeast. Yeah. Alright, so what kind of yeast do you use? Do you stick to one yeast for all the brews, or is it different yeasts for different brews, or experiments, or?
We tend to use two main yeasts. The first is an English ale yeast. We use that for anything from our Nanny State 0.5 ABV up to Chaos Theory, which is 7.1. Lovely yeast, good neutral flavour profile, and that's the thing that we look for in all of our yeasts, because we're all hopheads basically. Yeah. This is our main ingredient. That's the one that we really put as much care and attention into, making sure that the recipes will promote the hop aroma, the hop flavour as much as possible. So we don't want to detract from that by chucking in like a really S3 English yeast or anything like that. So the English ale yeast that we use, top fermented ale yeast, very, very flavour neutral. We also ferment at a slightly lower temperature, anywhere between 18 and 19 degrees, to try and again suppress those highly active flavour compounds. Basically to let the hops dominate, let the hops come through as much as possible.
Do you not need to use more like alcohol resistant yeasts?
Yes.
You know, when you're making the barley wines and
the barley wines are hardcore. Anything above 7% and up to about 15 or 16% we use our
something more like wine yeast, or
it's well, not quite actually. That's we do use a little bit of champagne yeast as a polisher.
Yeah.
Our main yeast for our high gravity brews, anything between 7% and about 14-15, is a West Coast American ale strain, which again is very, very flavour neutral, but it has a much higher tolerance to alcohol. Yeah. So it can ferment up to about 15, I think, is about the highest we've had. And we also use champagne yeast as, like I said, a polisher. So what we'll do is we'll get some big beers like the Tokyo, for example, the 18%. We will ferment that out mostly on the USA 2. We'll chuck in some champagne yeast in there because that again is a much higher alcohol tolerance, and it continues to ferment very slowly, but it does continue to ferment, take out some of the sugars and give out alcohol. So it's but you need to be very, very particular about your addition to that, because if you add it too early, you can start to get some very big flavors coming from the champagne yeast. So you can start to get like an almost kind of really young wine aroma. Flavor is not really very pleasant, to be honest. But if you leave it too late, there's not enough nutrients, free amino acids, zinc, all those other things that the yeast really need to get going. There's not enough of that left in the beer for it to kind of get a foothold and start fermenting. So you basically just pitch and it does nothing. Something I didn't talk about is we do treat our water. All of our water comes in, it's off a city supply or domestic supply, and we filter it down. So run through filters and strip out salts, chlorine's a common one, any bugs or anything that's in there, and then we'll add salt into our finish done to either bring up the levels of calcium. Calcium is very, very important for yeast. That's why a lot of brewers add gypsum to their beer, to their water. So we add gypsum, sodium chloride, some normal table salt, calcium chloride, and magnesium sulfate as well. And all those salts will add something to the beer. Like the sodium gives your beer a little bit of mouthfeel. Not, you don't add very much. I'm talking about in 5,000 litres we add like 300 grams of foam. That's very, very small amounts, but they're all incredibly important to the natural fermentation of yeast and stuff like that. You're really testing my brewing knowledge.
The man knows what he's talking about. What was the first brew you ever did?
First brew I ever did was a kit. I forget which one it's called, but it's the one called Brewdog.
John Bull.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah, classic, man, classic. And I got it from a little homebrewing shop down Leith in Edinburgh. Run by a guy called Davey, and that was really my introduction into the brewing world. And that kind of chance, I wanted to, make a beer and stuff like that. Really didn't know what I was doing. Went down in there, started talking to him a little bit. Bought the basic kit for, I forget, maybe 20 or 30 pounds. A little fermentation bucket, a little pressurized little keg, the kit, maybe a couple of spoons of hydrometer and stuff like that. And from buying that bit of kit and going back down and seeing him every now and then, he would say, "Oh man, I've got this really cool hops, and we're going to try that. We've got some nice crystal in just now from faucets or whatever. And it was really that kind of that environment that kind of grew my interest in brewing, because there was a lot of other home brewers who would come in and they would all talk about, you know, what they've got on and stuff like that. So it was a real eye opener from somebody who, you know, really didn't know very much back when I was studying chemistry, and yeah, just really fell in love with the versatility of it, and the fact that, you know, once you started branching out there and not using the kits, starting to throw in your own hops and own malts and stuff like that, there were endless combinations and endless possibilities for it. And it was that level of freedom and excitement, I think, that really kind of drew me to the industry.
So did James and Martin homebrew before they started?
They did, yeah. They homebrewed in Edinburgh as well. Martin was studying brewing and distilling down at Head Brewer University, right? And he was childhood friends with James. They were both from this area, and they moved down to Edinburgh. I think they shared a flat, and they did some home brews together down there. I'm not sure how much.
Good stuff. What's your personal favourite beer? Is it the Punk IPA? Or?
It changes. It changes all the time. It changes with maybe some of the batches. It changes with, I don't know, the time of year. I would be really hard pressed to pick one. I do love Punk. As it is now, I really love the old Punk that we used to do, the 6%, aggressive, hoppy, dry, bitter.
What was the reason for the change?
Basically to try and make what was our flagship beer, our biggest beer, the one that we promote the most, the one that we put out there, make it a little bit more accessible.
Got you.
To general people, because it was felt that we had enough big, aggressive, powerful hoppy beers in our profile. We wanted to, I don't know, I always compare it with like a kind of gateway beer, you know.
Got you.
Draw them in.
Yeah,
because it is a very nice beer. It's very fruity, but it's very drinkable. It doesn't have too much bitterness to it. It's not too sweet. It's not too dry. It is a lovely beer to drink. And we find that a lot of people will, you know, they'll go in and try this and they'll think, oh, you know, this beer actually tastes of something that's got some type of complexity to it. And then they'll maybe move on to like a 5 AM, or they'll move on to a hardcore, and then they'll try some stuff by Thornbridge or by, you know, Cromery up north and stuff like that, and they'll start to, you know, they'll start on their little path of discovery down the world of craft brewing, which is an amazing walk, and it really is. There's so many awesome beers out there.
Do you always generally drink Brewdog, or are there a few of the other beers out there that you find maybe, like you and your favourite one's Champion, isn't it?
Well, I must admit, I like McEwen's Champion. It's not. I do. Yeah. I mean, it's. I was like, no, don't tell him I like Champion, for Christ's sake.
Everyone's got their dirty little secret. I love Red Death, McEwen's Export.
Oh, I like that. I like that too. I like that too.
I had a can of that recently. I was going, oh.
No, I like it. I like it. I've always liked that. I quite like some of the Environment beers. Have you tried? Like Leah Fail, for example.
Yeah, Leah Fail's very good. Their Independence is a lovely beer as well. Very traditional brews, but very, very good. Fine ales. I drink quite a lot of fine ales. Those guys are ripping out just now. They do a number of very, very good beers, very flavoursome.
I like Cairngorm Gold through Cairngorm Brewery.
Cairngorm,
it's like a good stout. I quite like it anyway. How do you feel about it?
I had a bottle of that not too long ago. It's a very, very nice stout. I've always loved their Trade Winds.
Trade Winds is good. Yeah,
a lovely, lovely drinkable pint. But yeah, there's so many different beers and so much variety out there that it's, you know, it's amazing. It'd be difficult to pick out a few. I like to drink a lot of American stuff, a lot of Stone, Sierra Nevada, because those guys, you know, those guys on the West Coast, Green Flash and all that. If you want hops, those guys are the original ones, you know, Ballast Point and Dale Smith and stuff like that.
Yeah,
those guys are just absolutely incredible.
So, is this your dream job then?
It is. I still can't believe sometimes that they pay me to make beer. Do you know what I mean?
They pay you to make beer.
Just say it. It's weird.
It is. It's great. I'm really chuffed for you, mate. This is excellent. Actually, like you get paid to brew beer.
Has Brewdog ever thought about kind of, you know, making something like, you know, like Krabby's ginger beer? Do you know what I mean? Like kind of making beers.
Like a total non-beer then, like getting away from beer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a beer of sorts, isn't it? No.
No. It's kind of ginger.
Do you like Krabby's? Do you like?
I don't really like ginger, to be honest.
Right. Okay. You won't like that then.
My granny always used to force feed me ginger when I was old. Sells the stomach apparently, so I always associated ginger with feeling sick, which is so good.
Probably not the drink for you then.
No. But I mean,
But like kind of stuff like alcohol pops and things like that, you're not really.
Yeah, well, I remember having a conversation with Martin many years ago about the fact that, you know, Brewdog doesn't have to just be about beer. There are other avenues that we can go. You know, we've been producing the Cinque de Bismarck and the Tactical Nuclear Penguin, which are essentially spirits. They're derived from beer, but they are spirits. They're way up there in the ABV. We were looking into this, I forget what it was. This really weird bacteria that this German company had discovered or something like that. They actually metabolizes alcohol. So you make a beer and put this bacteria in, eats up all the alcohol, and you end up with like a non-alcoholic.
Right, I was wondering how they made these barley drinks you see in like supermarkets.
No, but they don't. This is a cutting edge kind of thing.
This is something else. I forget what it's called. And there was a big conversation about starting to do beers that were maybe a little bit more. I guess using a bit more fruit and stuff like that.
Oh, God.
But it's one of these things that there's so many things you can do with it. There's so many different things. There's so many different.
You gotta be careful.
You haven't done a cider yet, have you?
We haven't done a cider purely because ciders, lambics, gooses, all those type of things, they require a different yeast, and that is one thing that keeps brewers awake at night is contamination of beer.
Right.
So if we have another yeast strain, we already have our house yeast, our USA2 yeast, a lager yeast, champagne yeast. We occasionally have Belgian yeast or wheat yeast and stuff like that around. There's so much potential for one of those to cross-contaminate to something else, and all of a sudden you've got a
5,000 litres of
punk that tastes like
crap,
or something like that. So you really want to try and minimize that as much as possible. I mean, hygiene is a really big thing here. We concentrate on it a lot, and we have, touch wood, never had a serious infection. But you do see them in brewers occasionally, and they can devastate companies.
Yeah, I can imagine. If a home brewer gets 20 litres that's gone off, he's a bit pissed off and he throws it away. But it cost you guys thousands. Could potentially sink a smaller brewery, I suppose.
Absolutely, and it almost has. Aaron had a very, very serious lactobacillus infection a number of years ago. Two actually, back to back. Very nasty bacteria. It's actually quite prominent in packaged goods. So you brew it, you ferment it, you package it, you send it out, then it starts to go bad. So you don't know it's bad until months down the line.
God.
And it put them in receivership, just to bottom them out. So it's one of those things. It would be nice to start doing. One thing that we really, really want to start doing is sours, lambics, goose, and stuff like that. But we just do not want to have that bacteria in those wild yeasts kicking around.
But my understanding of lambic beer is that back in the day in Germany, they used to have big open wort vats, and they would just let the winds from the valley blow through it, and the wild yeasts would come and settle, and that's how you. So how would you guys? I mean, I'm assuming you guys would have to add something that would essentially do the same thing, rather than just leaving the wort container open, hoping that yeast came along.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that type of spontaneous fermentation is very particular to certain regions. And if you try doing that, like we've got a mate over in Italy that tried to do that with a tub of wort in his backyard, and just ended up tasting like a glass of shit, to be honest. But good on him trying. We would need to pitch a sour culture. So, I don't know if you saw it, but Francis got a little slap pack through there, like a lot of homebrewers use, full of yeast. You can buy these sour cultures from homebrew shops and internet and stuff like that. We would need to introduce that directly to the beer. The only we have made a couple of beers in the past. Zephyr being one very old beer that we left in whiskey barrel for so long. We left in whiskey barrels for so long, sorry, that it started to take on the characteristics of a sour, because there's so much Brettanomyces, Lactobacillus, Acetobacter, yeast and bacteria within the wood of these casks that if you leave it for long enough, it will eventually infect the beer and it will start to sour. So it would certainly be a fun thing to do, but we would definitely want to get a much more controllable environment to do that. I don't know if you've had a look around inside, looked at the floors and stuff like that, but that unit used to be a garage. It's not designed to be a brewery. None of the floors slope towards drains. We don't have access to the back walls sometimes, so it's very difficult to clean those things out. We do it, but it's
painstaking,
It's about
painstaking,
it really is to keep the level of hygiene. So it's something that we might do in the future, sours, ciders, stuff like that. But yeah, we would definitely want to be in control a little bit more than like we have just now.